My Staff connects the right people and the right companies. Fast, friendly, and focused on results. From temporary staffing to executive recruitment, the My Staff team knows Nebraska business and delivers a job done right. If you've got a big project coming up, don't stress your team. Call Virginia Frazee at My Staff. Omaha businesses trust Virginia to find the right temporary, permanent, and legal talent fast. For skilled corporate support that delivers results, call 402-614-1441. Whatever your hiring need or career move, My Staff is your employment partner for a job done right. Visit mystaff.com or call 402-614-1441. Because at My Staff, we're not just recruiters, we're partners in your success story.
When you're managing an HR department, you're often the bearer of bad news.
Rising costs, employee turnover, cultural complaints, key people not feeling appreciated, compliance concerns, and so much more.
It's time to change the conversation. It's time to deliver real results to your leadership team. It's time to think more broadly.
It's time you meet with Ellerbrock Norris.
Ellerbrock Norris will help you think differently about the benefits world and be your advocate to broader risk management across your organization.
After one meeting, your team will walk away knowing how one or two small changes can create amazing ripple effects across your entire company.
Set up your free risk consultation today at ellerbrock-norris.com.
To the leaders who steward numbers and risk.
And to the HR partners who translate people into value.
To the balance between cost, quality, and growth.
And the strategies that support them.
To clarity when complexity reigns.
And trust that's built through shared goals.
To conversation that connects strategy to outcomes.
And language that resonates across functions.
Cheers to HR.
Cheers to HR.
I'm Amy Luckenbill.
And I'm Jamie Mohrman, and we are your hosts for HR Wine Bar.
Today, we have the second in our series on the language of leadership, where we're chatting with members of the C-suite, CEO, CFO, COO, and CHRO, to help all of our HR professionals get a better sense of perspective that each of these leaders has, so that the HR partner can more easily engage with the C-suite on a deeper level. So today is how to speak CFO. We're talking budgets, benchmarks, and Barolo. We're also talking about how to frame HR's work in terms of financial impact, risk, and a business narrative to better align and engage with those sitting in this C-suite role. We're delighted to welcome Tara Wisdom, CRO of Ortho Nebraska. She's going to talk about what a CRO does in a little bit, but she does have past experience as a CFO at Ortho Nebraska. She's a leader with deep healthcare finance experience who oversees financial reporting, fiscal strategy, budgeting, and analysis for a major regional healthcare system. And she'll talk a little bit about how her role has changed into that CRO space. You can look forward, though, to a blend of context, practical translation tools, and real-world insight you can use when you sit across the table from your CFO. Before we get into the meat of that conversation, Tara, would you frame it for us by telling us a little bit about Ortho Nebraska specifically, your CFO experience, and your current role as the Chief Revenue Officer as well?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. This will be a great conversation. Ortho Nebraska is a very large orthopedic specialty, clinics, hospital, imaging, physical therapy, all aspects of orthopedic care. And so we have everything. We have about 33 physicians that are at Ortho Nebraska that service those care along with APPs, physical therapists, all of those. All of that care. Our really philosophy is finding what is wrong and finding that patient journey for you. So your journey is going to be unique, and it might be different for you versus your spouse or your neighbor or your child. What is going on with you, and how can we help you get better and on your journey, and what are your goals? And so that has been very successful. Direct to patient care is important, that you don't need a referral to come to see an orthopedic surgeon to see the care. You might not see a surgeon right away. You might see an APP. Come to our urgent care, come to our emergency room. Those type of access to care is very important. And we've been around for a very long time. We have a lot of growth opportunity and goals. We continue to grow throughout the community, and just the uniqueness of healthcare and what goes along from an HR perspective of that, and the extra rules and things that we have to follow from an HR perspective. So that's a little bit about Ortho Nebraska.
Yes, healthcare has a whole bucket of extra requirements and compliance. Yes.
Absolutely. Compliance is very important. And it's something that has really been important to our leaders and our physicians and just everyone. It's our number one thing we start every board meeting with is quality, experience, people. That is what's important. Financials are next. We can't have good financials if we don't have those first three. And so we have to talk about all of that. Financials will follow if all of those are going well. So I think that's been a really important part of success, is identifying those opportunities and what's important in healthcare.
Fantastic. Talk to us a little bit about the CFO space versus CRO space. This is, quite frankly, CRO is not a term we hear very often. So
Right.
I'd love to know more about that.
Absolutely. As a CFO, came on as a CFO, had accounting and public accounting background, always in healthcare, which was very, very easy transition into Ortho Nebraska. As the CFO, really focused on not only reporting the financial statements, but also the revenue cycle. So everything from access all the way to getting paid, all of those steps were under me as the CFO. And as we've just continued to grow in the last year, we decided we needed to separate both of those roles. So still very financial driven, just not reporting the financial statements. It's getting the revenue into the door and being part of that financial part of the operations.
Excellent. Thank you for that clarification. I appreciate it.
So Tara, as we kind of get kicked off in this conversation, I really appreciated what you said about Ortho Nebraska's stance on, if we do, these other things right, the experience, the quality of care, et cetera, the financials will follow. And that's kind of music to an HR person's ears, because we're focused on those things too, right? If we can retain our people, if we can create a great culture, like, hypothetically, that should also impact our revenue and people coming to us and staying with us, and costs on the HR side of things too. Can you talk a little bit about when you have people leaders coming to you, or HR, we're thinking of initiatives maybe in terms of that retention and engagement and things that we want to push forward. Can you talk a little bit about what you appreciate most as HR comes to tell that story? Maybe about what they're looking to do within their department that's inevitably going to cost some money, but hopefully save some money or even bring in more down the road?
Absolutely. I think one thing for when leaders come, and I've worked very closely with the HR my whole career here, and is leading more with maybe the problem, not the program. So what is that problem? Instead of, we want to launch, let's just say, a leadership development problem, it's more, we're seeing this percent turnover. So it's data driven, coming to the CFO and saying, we're seeing this percent turnover rate. This is the cost of that turnover rate. So then we'd like to launch this program, and the cost is this. And we think, based on, whatever return on investment that we've talked about here on that leadership program, that we will reduce that turnover rate to 10%, 5%, whatever it might be. Those are the type of approaches that really help the CFO help to support those types of programs that the HR is coming to with, from a cost perspective.
Yeah,
we call that bringing receipts.
Yeah, sure. Bringing the receipts. And I think there is that, that it's such an important relationship between CFO, CRO, HR, whichever acronym we're using there. But that is such an important relationship because inevitably we're wanting to advance initiatives that hopefully will continue to bring success to the organization. But sometimes that storytelling piece can be intimidating. It can be hard to determine this might be important to us, but is this what is going to be the thing that pushes the needle forward, or is this the right data? Do you find that you meet with your HR teams on a regular basis to kind of talk through that, or maybe kind of set the stage for what that storytelling can look like to be most effective?
Absolutely. On a weekly basis, we have a leadership meeting where HR is in each one of those meetings, along with the CEO, the CFO, the CRO, the chief nursing officer. Everybody needs to know what's going on in the organization, and we take turns within that meeting of who is reporting their metrics, for example. So, HR might be one of data is very important, but is it turnover? Is it engagement? Is it time to fill? Is it outstanding? How many of our I guess, how much do we still have to fill?
Mhm.
How many open
Yeah.
positions are there that we can, that we have out there? That's very impactful to the entire organization. We all should know what we're working on from an HR perspective. So we're having those discussions on where's that trending, so we can see, are we having issues, and having the HR leader discuss those. I think then from a financial question that we tend to ask in those meetings is, it doesn't have to be perfect math, but what are those replacement costs if you're talking about turnover? What are some of the productivity issues that we have if you're talking to turnover? Those are some of the, I guess, directional in the economics that we want to know, and that's what builds trust with the CFO. Is if you're understanding the underlying numbers that are creating some of these HR metrics.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that piece of really the team perspective and having kind of everyone's voice heard in that, but from the perspective that is going to have the most impact. And I think putting that data together sometimes, even as in the HR seat, you're like, well, I hope this is what they're looking for. But I think having those consistent meetings probably helps cut down on the question of, is this what I should bring forward or not? I love that
Absolutely.
approach.
I think hearing what others are talking about when you're presenting financials and what those metrics are, hearing what issues or where you might have high costs, how can the HR team mitigate that? What else can they be part of it? Everybody is part of the entire organization and success. So listening to that, listening to the CNO to say this is our staffing issues, or this is really where we're hearing it, which maybe the HR leader isn't necessarily hearing. Um, I love, one of my leaders and mentors told me one time to not you want to have your leaders reporting to you to tell you what what you need to hear versus what you want to hear. And that can happen a lot, with HR. What do we need to hear, or what do we want to hear?
Mhm.
Those type of things. So
Absolutely. And I can imagine in what you've described of your culture and how the leadership team operates, that transparency is something that has become probably much easier. And knowing that there's something that's going to be done with what's being shared. I'm sure that has helped a lot.
absolutely.
Hmm. I'm going to turn it over to Amy here to talk a little bit about prioritization and financial language. It's a
So
whole foreign language for
it's
us
a whole
HR.
foreign language to some of us. Yeah. So Tara, what we neglected to do at the beginning of our time together is talk to you a little bit about the format that we follow on HR Wine Bar. So we kind of follow a taste test tasting, if you will. So first we talk about what we see, and we've been covering that in your conversation so far with the questions that Jamie has posed. And what I see is you're kind of sitting in the catbird seat, and your HR folks are also in the catbird seat, because it sounds like your C-suite team has a really good pulse and a really good uh, conversation swirl, right?
Mhm.
Going around and everyone tag teaming into each other's initiatives, which just sounds spectacular. And I will say, from my past experience at those levels, is I've not always experienced those kinds of interpersonal relationships and communication and collaboration. And so it really sounds like you have a fantastic team. At least that's what I'm seeing. So now we do go into the swirl. We're going to shake things up a little bit, and I'd like for you to talk to us a little bit about CFO prioritization. What does HR need to understand about cash flow and budgeting, and kind of planning for these scenarios as they come up in real time, and have a sense of urgency about them versus forecasting and going forward, and how risk and revenue kind of sit. These are conversations that HR is not always doesn't always have the right experience for the language. Right. And so if you can chat with us a little bit about those conversation, and how finance works, and tight margins, and regulatory complexity, and those types of things that really sit outside of the purview of the head of HR, and swirl around some of those concepts, and tell us what we need to know to get a baseline for conversation with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's really important is having HR in the room when you're talking about your entire budget. So HR should understand the entire organization's budget to understand then how their team and what they're working with the teams can help move that needle. So um, I think cash flow is always important. You mentioned cash flow. I think that's really important. So when HR is talking about PTO, well, are we accruing PTO, for example? Are we what rate are we accruing it on the books versus when we pay it out? Those type of things, making sure that's all aligned. That's really important. That's going to be important to the cash flow if you have a high turnover rate and you're automatically starting to pay out a lot of PTO. Those initiatives now with the new sick leave in Nebraska specifically, what does that mean to the financial statements too? And always involving the CFO or the accounting team in those type of conversations when you're making those new policies. And that's what Ortho Nebraska did when this came out in 2025 of how is this going to affect financials? How is this going to affect the cash flow? All those new things that are being impacted in HR obviously still affect the financials as well. So sometimes we think that's separate for some reason, but it's very impactful. In Ortho Nebraska, in healthcare specific, there's a lot of differentials that we pay if you're working overnight or back to the PTO, the way we take PTO on holidays, because some people still have to work on holidays, and working those kind of things out on how impactful that is to paying out for that cash for the month. What's going to be different? Benefits are another big one that we think that the CFO should be part of those conversations when you're talking about benefits, whether you're negotiating with your broker, thinking about the comparison of the cost of being self-insured versus using insurance. I think those are big, big decisions that are being made that should include both, finance and HR and the impact of the people. So when we're looking at what our rates going to be for the next year, is that an HR decision or is that a financial decision? It's got to be together. So those
It has to
discussions
be
have to
both.
be
Absolutely.
together on if we just did and the communication, then including communication in with that. If we do a 3% increase in compensation in 1 year, but we're increasing benefits by 10%, that doesn't sound right. Like I didn't really get an increase, even though it's different numbers. So we like to really think about it. How is this impactful to somebody on a paycheck? So 3% increase, you can calculate that, and your cost of, if it's a 10% increase, which I hope we haven't had to do, which we haven't, we're pretty lucky there. But then what is that 10% increase really from a dollar? How's that going to affect my paycheck? And that communication back to the people and how it affects the people is really important. Having all those teams in the meeting to discuss that impact is important as well.
Mhm. I love that the 2 examples you gave. Typically, I don't know how this is in the healthcare industry because I've not seen those numbers, but those are the 2 biggest line items is your payroll and your insurance spend, right? They're just massive. And so the integration of finance and HR is super tight, especially on those 2 line items, and having that open line of communication absolutely is key number 1. So, thank you for that. I'm going to lead us off into the next section. Actually, I'm going to pass it over to Jamie for our next section, which is what we call the sniff test. So, this is the place where we bring about some plausible scenarios, things that might actually happen for both us in HR and for you in the finance arena. Jamie's going to pose a couple of scenarios to you and just get your take on the situation.
Okay.
Yeah, this is the part I always like to say. You're sort of on the hot seat here with these sniff tests, but we talk a lot about sniff tests in HR too, and using our community to work through different scenarios because we're likely all handling, similar situations, but how do we actually go about making decisions and coming to a conclusion on that? So we're excited about kind of picking your brain on how you evaluate scenarios like this. So the first one that we have would be a headcount increase versus projected revenue. So the scenario is that HR comes to you and proposes adding 5 full-time employees to support growth in a clinical service line, but revenue projections are optimistic, not yet realized. Operations is feeling stretched. Finance is a bit cautious. What is your initial response to this HR team that's saying, we've got to add people, right? Operations is stretched.
Right. I love that. I think each department that we have worked with from a financial perspective, not just HR, but HR is coming to us, but so should the manager that's asking for that in that department. So collaborating with them on the why and understanding the why behind that increase. So I would hope that the CFO knows what the growth strategy has been, or the new location in our example might be why we need to hire more people. But where I always start is where is the productivity that supports that, or what is the trigger in your department that is triggering an additional FTE. And so explain to me why you came up with that if I don't already know. And then how is this impacted? So if you see this revenue growth is going to, let's say in the revenue cycle, for example, going to add, 10,000 more visits to the Loess, Nebraska clinic, then that's going to need potentially another coder. And so we're asking for another coder, and HR is saying we're asking for a coder. This is our metric. For every 5,000 or 10,000 additional claims that are going to be generated, we need another coder. So yes, that's very justified. The revenue will be there if we anticipate that. You should have that number as well. But that type of analysis is probably what the first question I would ask.
Yeah, so don't come and just say, well, I feel like we need these. That's why. I feel like we could use a few extra people.
And I usually push back to say, then is your team productive? So is everyone meeting their productivity measures, or are we going to see attrition in the team where would someone new potentially make up for that productivity? And as an HR business partner, I think that they should know within that department that they're supporting what's kind of going on in that department too.
Absolutely.
From productivity or personnel issues. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. It signals to me that as the HR professional, I need to be keeping a pulse on that proactively versus just when something is, on fire and we need this person tomorrow, what has led to this point and what data do we have to support that going into that conversation. And the more it sounds like we can be doing that on a regular basis, the better.
Yeah. I think also is this an investment we're making? And then what's the return? So I know we're not going to have, I think you had mentioned revenue on this for, 4 months. We're making an investment or a year in a new leader or something like that. This is why we're doing it again. But this is anticipated to be an investment, but this is going to be the runway or what we're going to yield from it afterwards. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect numbers, but what are we even thinking about the numbers and then question, the conversation.
Yeah. And something that kind of when we were putting together this example, things that sometimes come up too can be things that are coming to our department, like the team is being burnt out, right? And how are we analyzing that versus just saying, we know people are burnt out on the team, so we need to add something. It sounds to me like we need to be diving a few steps deeper, peeling back those layers to really understand why, where is the burnout being created? Where's the gap? What does that equate to? And being able to bring that to you or to the CFO role, ready
I
to
think
kind of
timing of this is also, hey, we're going to do this in 6 months into the year or something like that. That's what the CFO wants to know is when is the time? Is this going to affect the entire year budget or is this going to be, half a year, something like that? Or can we negotiate when that can be done so that it doesn't maybe such a large impact if it's not generating revenue right away?
Yeah, maybe more of a phased approach, especially if it's multiple FTEs we're asking to add. Interesting. I love that. Amy.
Yeah, what I'm hearing in this conversation, and I love this, Tara. I want to listen to you all the time because I'm learning so much and connecting some dots that I'm like, yeah, I didn't link those two things together. I think from an HR standpoint, Jamie, you mentioned I feel like, right? Um, and I want to make sure that we put our finger on the pulse of qualitative data. It's not that I feel like is wrong, it's that we need to translate that data into something tangible, like the trigger that sparks the need for an FTE, or have those metrics in place that, for example, this department has been running on overtime for 3 months. Right, and we know that overtime in certain fields, if nursing especially, it's just like any other labor field. You run on overtime for a certain length of time. As a standard, people are going to get burnout, work comp claims are going to go up, et cetera, right? And so making sure that we in HR have a pulse on feelings, qualitative data translated into quantitative data, and we have those things in place ahead of time rather than going, well, this feels off. How can I justify this decision by backtracking in my numbers? We should be building these things in advance. Do I have the pulse on that correctly?
100%. Yes. We should be monitoring those anyway. That's what the manager should be monitoring. They probably have those. They're just not correlating that then to the FTE. And so creating that type of culture is really important to say, this is the why I need another FTE, and owning their budget as well. So this is the budget I'm supposed to be meeting. If I'm going to add this, where else can I be looking to reduce costs? So if you're going to replace something with some type of technology, a lot of times instead of the FTE down the road. So I need this now, but here's what we're going to do to help increase productivity. And I'm not going to need that for the next group that we're hiring from a practitioner perspective that's going to create 10,000 more claims. I'm not going to need more people because we're implementing this, but I need it now. So the growth will be mitigated by some type of technology and attrition or something like that.
Absolutely. I love the key takeaway that if we're feeling something, right, digging deeper and putting that kind of into a quantitative story and bringing that forward. That's a great takeaway from our sniff test on this one. I love that. We have one other scenario for you. And This one I see happen a lot, that in HR, we want to keep developing people, right? Retention is a big deal, and we want to develop people into growth opportunities, maybe into leadership, maybe into roles. Maybe we're trying to address turnover or engagement concerns. And so we want to put in place some sort of leadership development or training program. So in this scenario, these are not usually um, inexpensive investments to do, but have, hopefully an ROI there that would be significant. So HR is proposing a $120,000 leadership development program to address frontline turnover and engagement concerns. Outcomes are described as culture improvement and stronger leaders. So the sniff test questions that we had around this, we'd be curious for your first response, but also what we could be bringing forward to make a stronger case for that particular program.
Sure. I think the questions I would ask right away, if just off the top of my head here, is well, what's broken today? What do we have today if you have something? What's broken and why isn't it not working? And what's our current cost? That's probably going to be my second, because I'm not going to know the exact. What's our current cost? And then what's the difference in your anticipated new cost just for the program? And then what's the risk if we don't do anything? Ask that question like, just, well, what if we didn't do anything? What would happen? What are some of the metrics again that I think are really important that are going to change? What's our trend been, and are we going to see something better? So which KPI can I tie back to this if we make this investment in this program? So I think some of those KPIs that I guess I would look at or ask for is it going to affect maybe we said turnover, engagement. How are we measuring that? Is that part of the program, or is that something else? And then our training. So that training cost, what are we estimating, and what are you using for that cost avoidance or those efficiency gains potentially? Can you use that in your ROI for this specific scenario of performance engagement? What are some of those opportunities? So if we're going to do this and it's going to cost us, $400,000 for this program, let's look at all of these metrics and what they cost and put a dollar to them and see what that return on. Oh, that's going to be a year return on investment, or 2 people can move up in this or not be retained, and we will have our return on investment. I think those, off the top of my head, that would be my scenario of the conversation I would have with the HR leader if they brought this proposal to me.
Yeah. And that's a great point. And I think through kind of what you were saying about kind of deducing the why around it too, that maybe we're looking at it from the broad leadership perspective, but maybe there's one group as we start diving into some of those metrics. Maybe there's one particular group of managers where we can start with maybe a smaller cohort that would be a smaller investment up front and tailor that following, doing one kind of pilot to see what the ROI is versus doing the whole thing at once. Or maybe it sounds like getting creative with some of that based on the data we have available to us.
Yeah, I mean, in Northern Nebraska, for example, that's been brought, as something within our engagement surveys that people want. It's what people are saying in their when they come to hire. We've got to listen to every single department and what they're needing, and then say, okay, is it going to benefit the majority of the organization as well?
That's a great point. I'm reminded of some social media post. I don't know where it came from. I don't remember who it was. I don't even remember when, but I remember an HR figurehead somewhere saying on a post that HR is responsible for ROI, return on intangibles. And I remember just kind of reframing it, and it's back to the same comment I made before about the feels, right? And quantifying those and translating the intangible return into an investment number that makes sense for the organization. So, what I'm hearing as we wrap up our sniff test is that passing the CFO sniff test is not necessarily about being cheaper. It's about being strategic, about asking the right questions. And I feel like HR Wine Bar needs a t-shirt that says, "We bring receipts."
Yes.
And on that note, and a little bit of humor, we're going to take a quick pause. We're going to ask our listeners to just let the ads breathe for a moment. They're the reason that we can come to you each and every day. So we'll be right back.
My Staff connects the right people and the right companies, fast, friendly, and focused on results. From temporary staffing to executive recruitment, the My Staff team knows Nebraska business and delivers a job done right. Looking for your next HR role in Nebraska, Iowa, Colorado, or South Dakota? Everyone knows Kim Lynch at My Staff because she connects great people with great careers. Let Kim help you land your next HR dream job. Email Kim at mystaff.com. Whatever your hiring need or career move, My Staff is your employment partner for a job done right. Visit mystaff.com or call 402-614-1441. Because at My Staff, we're not just recruiters, we're partners in your success story.
Thinking about self-funded health insurance?
Every HR department must go through the process at some point. You're sitting there with 25, 50, maybe 100 employees, staring at a renewal notice of 15%, wondering how you can better control your program.
Noess is there to help. If you're in a fully insured or level-funded plan today, it may be time to look at self-funded options. The team at Ellerbrock can walk you through how to contain any unexpected costs, how to gain better control of your pricing, and how to reinvest those savings back into your plan to ultimately take care of your people.
Set up your free benefits consultation at ellerbrock-norris.com today to better protect your purpose.
Welcome back. Let's move into our second pour and dig a little deeper.
So, Tara, thank you again for joining us. I'm learning so much. What we'd like to do for our second pour today is what I call a translation guide. So, as we've been talking about these scenarios, I've been thinking about how there's a mind shift, but there's also some language behind, where HR sits, and the words that we use mean different things to CFO. So I'm just going to give a couple of different translations, and I'd just like to get your feedback on if our thinking is right. So when we say the word engagement, or we need to improve engagement, what does that mean to you sitting in a CFO seat? What are your first thoughts about that word and how you translate when HR talks to you about engagement? What does that mean to you?
To me, that means that the teams they're working to their capacity. They're enjoying their jobs. They're wanting to come to work. They're getting the work done, and they're moving forward. They're thinking of the next opportunity within Ortho Nebraska, those type of things. They're really engaged in what's going on. That's what I'm thinking from a CFO perspective, but it's probably from the HR's perspective too, because we're always in the room, asking those questions. Those are the things that's what engagement kind of means to me.
Is there value for us when we come to you to talk about engagement to translate that softer conceptual framework over to a clearer, more concrete financial verbiage that we can kind of tap into? Like, I'm thinking stability, risk, productivity. Like, how is, to your point earlier, how is lower engagement showing up? How is higher engagement showing up? If we see a 5% engagement drop, how does that correlate to, say, absenteeism?
Right. Well, I think I like engagement surveys. Those, like, what are we seeing from the survey, and what do we need to be working on by department? So those surveys need to just be more, by department. That to me is, we've got to have some engagement in this department because we saw it on the survey. And does that mean it necessarily costs money? Potentially, but where do we need to shift the money? If our benefits aren't giving us the return that we need, or the satisfaction keeping the team here and engaged, then that would be one thing that, what could we be working on to change the benefits to update that? That's usually what the HR team is coming to with. This is what everyone is saying. Now, what should we be doing about it? So they may not know how to solve it. How can we solve it as a leadership team? And then financially, what's that impact? So put some of that burden back on me to put that return on investment that we're saying versus just making you come up with it. Let's even talk to the entire leadership team on what they have seen in other boards they might be sitting on or other companies that they're working with. That's opportunity as well. And Amy, maybe ask your question again if I'm not answering in specific.
I think you do. I'm going to kind of out my past experiences here, but I think you do more work for your HR people than the average CFO. I could be wrong, but I think most of our folks out there working in HR, when they go to their finance person, I think there is some bit of framework of language that's just maybe conceptually, maybe I'm building a false wall that's not really there, but it feels to me like there's a hurdle in having this conversation with CFOs that you are naturally better at than most CFOs are. I could be wrong, but that's been my experience. And so when I come to a finance, or in my experience, when I've come to a finance person and I give a softer language to things that really are more conceptual, I tend to get, yeah, that's not important. Rather than, you know what, it's my job to help translate that into finance terms that make sense. So, for example, the word headcount is very concrete, right? We're thinking about capacity and constraint, and the things that we were talking about in the sniff test with Jamie's example. Those are concrete numbers. But when we're talking about culture, right, and taking that qualitative, the essence of a work environment, right, that's less concrete, more nebulous, and harder to put our hands on, I think my experience has been that we lose finance people in that conversation because those types of concepts are more difficult to put into hard numbers. And so that's the when I think of culture, if I'm going to translate that to a finance person, I'm going to say, well, it's the environment in which we execute, right? Our culture needs work, but CFO needs to hear, what does this mean in dollars? So if we're going to translate that, culture issues slow down decision making. They increase supervision time. They just slow the whole process. Poor culture creates disengagement and folks putting their attention where it's not actually providing results. It has compliance risks, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think it's important for our HR people to be shifting the softer concepts into something more concrete, because not every CFO conceptualizes and latches on to HR in the same way that you do. I could be wrong. Jamie, what's your take on that?
No, I love that. And I was thinking of two things you said that really stood out to me too. I think there's sometimes a perception where whatever I present needs to be perfect and I better have, all those things. And what I'm hearing from you is, let's not let perfection impede progress. And I'm going to walk alongside you in that progress. And that to me is huge, because we're better together. We're going to come up with different ideas or ways that maybe there is an idea over here that that may not fit 100%, but if we do this alongside it, we can make that work. And so hearing you say that, I think brings a lot of comfort. But the other thing that, it really stands out to me is just that relationship that you've built. And I think that's super unique for your team and for HR professionals to be able to build that relationship in that same way with the finance team or the CFO, so that it's not so intimidating to go forward and know what data to provide. That really stood out to me, that you walk alongside your team in that. And I think that is very unique to Amy's point.
Yes. I think in the non-financial HR team members, for the CFO to say, here's the format I want you to fill out to help bring back what I'm asking. So you probably have the numbers and you know what you're trying to say, but you don't really maybe have it in the format that the CFO is looking for. Challenge the CFO to say, can you put that in just a Excel spreadsheet for me with the headers and the what data you're really looking for? And then I'd love to fill that out for you, because I think sometimes when you're talking about what the language and the difference, that can be hard to translate. When somebody, HR likes to make it pretty and some of those kind of things. I just want these 5 tables.
You're like, just get to the data, just get to the spreadsheet. But I love that template, and that's just another way to say, let's help each other be successful in this, and let's save time. In the end, we're not having to go back and rework things or pull different data. We can do that together, but here's what we need to get started, and this is going to set us off on the right foot. And I love that.
What I'm hearing in that response is using a tool, using the spreadsheet as a bridge for the language, right? That no matter where you are in your relationship with your finance person is going in now, like, we're going to make this a call to action. Go to your CFO now. Go to your finance person that you work with all the time, because it might not be a CFO if we're working in small companies, right? It could be a controller or something like that. Go to that person now and say, hey, I'm trying to make sure that when I bring things to you, I'm bringing you data that is useful and helpful. And can we together build some kind of dashboard that is beyond the HR metrics that I can pull out of my HRIS really, really easily? Things that I keep the conversation going forward so that we can be ahead of problems as they come up, and that will reveal themselves in the data and give us a baseline for conversation. So that's the call to action. And what I'm hearing, Tara, that's a fantastic suggestion. HR, don't be scared of an Excel spreadsheet. They're magic. So we do want it to be pretty, though. I'm gonna out myself that I really do even want a spreadsheet to work really well, but I also want it to be colorful and eye-catching and give me the data that I want to. So that's fantastic. So Tara, our last little section of HR Wine Bar, we like to do what we call a wine flight. What we have discerned from our work in HR is that everything we do in HR is not black and white. Everything in HR is on a spectrum. So it's the perfect shade of gray for the context in which we're working. So we like to take a concept and show what the spectrum looks like. And because we're talking about wine, we go from sweet to dry. So if on the sweet end, we are very HR focused, very people first framing, very culture, very well-being, very soft conceptual feeling, right? Okay. And then we have the CFO on the other end. Again, you are exceptional in that you come to the middle very quickly for your HR folks. CFO framing is about ROI, risk, revenue impact, all of the things that Tara has brought to us today. And we want to find that balance. We want to use that spreadsheet we're building together to have a balanced framing that's about efficiency and data and revealing issues on the HR side in concrete data, bringing receipts. We want to find that happy medium and the place where we can converse with, work with, and move forward with our finance person. And so that's our flight for today. Find your medium, find your red blend, and your Barolo. I don't know if that's a blend or not, but I think that's a grape. And so find your Barolo and move forward with your finance person on that spectrum. Make sure you're meeting in the middle to make progress. So do you have any thoughts about that, Tara?
I think that is amazing. I think that's where we should all be. And it's really having that HR saying, I want to be your partner, CFO. If that relationship isn't there, creating that relationship to say, I want to be your partner. I know that finance is really important. That can help bring you closer to the middle of just knowing that HR wants to be part of the financial impact. That can help with that relationship and create the middle. But wonderful summary of, I love the analogy of dry to sweet.
We have one every time.
We haven't added bubbles yet. Maybe we should add bubbles at some point,
How to make it extra fizzy.
Extra, yeah. That'll be our next season on HR Wine.
I am always down for a bubbly rosé. That is kind of my sweet spot, so to speak.
Yes. Well, Tara, we just want to thank you so much today for your time. This has been super insightful, and I think we've all had some really great takeaways and loving hearing what you're doing in Ortho, Nebraska. And we'd love to have you join us again in the future to hear more about how we can
Thank you very
keep that
much.
relationship strong.
Great experience.
Absolutely. Well, it's time for our closing toast. So Amy and I will carry us through to that. So we'll kick it off with to HR pros, fluent in both people and numbers.
And to the partnerships that drive smarter investment.
Cheers to HR.
Cheers to HR.
Cheers to HR.
My Staff connects the right people and the right companies, fast, friendly, and focused on results. From temporary staffing to executive recruitment, the My Staff team knows Nebraska business and delivers a job done right. Looking for your next HR role in Nebraska, Iowa, Colorado, or South Dakota? Everyone knows Kim Lynch at My Staff because she connects great people with great careers. Let Kim help you land your next HR dream job. Email Kim at mystaff.com. Whatever your hiring need or career move, My Staff is your employment partner for a job done right. Visit mystaff.com or call 402-614-1441. Because at My Staff, we're not just recruiters, we're partners in your success story.
Does this sound familiar? You get your annual renewal notice and see your premiums rising every single year. But what are you going to do? If you get quotes from other carriers, you face an uphill battle. More and more change for your people year over year.
Benefits shouldn't be a once-a-year scramble. Ellerbrock Norris helps you think long-term. Long-term planning for your benefits package, long-term planning around employer retention, long-term planning around key people, and long-term planning built for cost savings.
Ellerbrock Norris is here to help you build a plan that's better for the bottom line and better for the people it's protecting.
Get your free benefits consultation today at ellerbrock-norris.com.
HR